Chapter 3, The Namesake. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll notice that we have some questions that we're going to look for to answer in this Chapter 3. The first question, what job does Ashok receive and how does he feel about it? Where is the job? Some vocabulary we'll look for is elderly, drastic, distressing, and stunned. All right, to begin, 1971. The Gangulis have moved to a university town outside Boston. As far as they know, they are the only Bengali residents. The town has a historic district, a brief strip of colonial architecture visited by tourists on summer weekends. There is a white-steepled congregational church, a stone courthouse with an adjoining jail, a coupled public library, a wooden well from which Paul Revere is rumored to have drunk. In winter, tapers burn in the windows of homes after dark. Ashok has been hired as an assistant professor of electrical engineering at the university. In exchange for teaching 5 classes, he earns $16,000 a year. He is given his own office with his name etched onto a strip of black plastic by the door. He shares, along with the other members of his department, the services of an elderly secretary named Mrs. Jones, who often puts a plate of homemade banana bread by the coffee percolator in the staff room. The job is everything Ashok has ever dreamed of. He has always hoped to teach in a university rather than work for a corporation. What a thrill, he thinks, to stand lecturing before a room full of American students. What a sense of accomplishment it gives him to see his name printed under faculty in the university directory. What joy each time Mrs. Jones says to him, "Professor Ganguly, your wife is on the phone." For Ashima, migrating to the suburbs feels more drastic, more distressing than the move from Calcutta to Cambridge has been. She wishes Ashok had accepted the position at Northeastern so they could have stayed in the city. She is stunned that in this town there are no sidewalks to speak of, no streetlights, no public transportation, no stores for miles at a time. She has no interest in learning how to drive the new Toyota Corolla it is now necessary for them to own. Though no longer pregnant, she continues, at times, to mix Rice Krispies and peanuts and onions in a bowl. After 2 years in an overheated university-subsidized apartment, Ashima and Ashok are ready to purchase a home. In the evenings, after dinner, they set out in their car. The walls of the new house are painted, the driveway sealed with pitch, and shingles and sundeck weatherproofed and stained. Ashok takes photographs of every room, Gogol standing somewhere in the frame to send to relatives in India. There are pictures of Gogol opening up the refrigerator, pretending to talk on the phone. He is a sturdily built child, with full cheeks but already pensive features. When he poses for the camera, he has to be coaxed into a smile. The house is 15 minutes from the nearest supermarket, 40 minutes from a mall. The address is 67 Pemberton Road. Their neighbors are the Johnsons, the Mertons, the Aspreys, and the Hills. There are 4 modest bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms, 8-foot ceilings, and a 1-car garage. At this point, you can go over to the right-hand side of the sheet and answer the question, describe the Ganguly home that the family moves into. Some of the vocabulary you may want to define is the adjective listless, sturdily, pensive, and coaxed. Another question to take a look at before we move on is why doesn't Ashima take Gogol to his first day of school? The August that Gogol turns 5, Ashima discovers she is pregnant again. In the mornings, she forces herself to eat a slice of toast, only because Ashok makes it for her and watches her. Because his mother tends to vomit the moment she finds herself in the moving car, she is unable to accompany her husband to take Gogol in September of 1973 to his first day of kindergarten at the town's public elementary school. By the time Gogol starts, it is already the second week of the school year. But for the past week, Gogol has been in bed, just like his mother, listless, without appetite, claiming to have a stomach ache, even vomiting one day into his mother's pink wastepaper basket. He doesn't want to go to kindergarten. He doesn't want to wear the new clothes his mother has brought him from Sears, hanging on a knob of his dresser, or carry his Charlie Brown lunchbox, or board the yellow bus that stops at the end of Pemberton Road. The school, unlike the nursery school, is several miles from the house, several miles from the university. On numerous occasions, he's been driven to across the building, a low brick structure with a perfectly flat roof and flag that flaps at the top of a tall white pole planted on the lawn. When they are alone, Mrs. Lapidus asks, "Are you happy to be entering elementary school, Gogol?" "My parents want me to have another name in school." "And what about you, Gogol? Do you want to be called by another name?" After a pause, he shakes his head. "Is that a no?" He nods yes. "Then it's settled. Can you write your name on this piece of paper?" In May, his sister is born. 2 days later, coming back from school, Gogol finds his mother at home again, wearing a bathrobe instead of a sari, and sees his sister awake for the first time. She is dressed in pink pajamas that conceal her hands and feet, with a pink bonnet tied around her moon-shaped face. His father is home too. His parents sit Gogol on the living room sofa and place Sonali in his lap, telling him to hold her against his chest, a hand cupped under her head, and his father takes pictures with a new Nikon 35mm camera. The shutter advances softly, repeatedly. The room is bathed in rich afternoon light. "Hi, Sonali," Gogol says, sitting stiffly, looking down at her face and then up at the lens. Though Sonali is the name on her birth certificate, the name she will carry officially through life, at home they begin to call her Sonu, then Sona, and finally, Sonia. They learn to roast turkeys, albeit rubbed with garlic and cumin and cayenne, at Thanksgiving, to nail a wreath to their door in December, to wrap woolen scarves around snowmen, to color boiled eggs, violet and pink at Easter, and hide them around the house. For the sake of Gogol and Sonia, they celebrate, with progressively increasing fanfare, the birth of Christ, an event the children look forward to more than the worship of Durga and Sanswati. During pujos scheduled for convenience on 2 Saturdays a year, Gogol and Sonia are dragged off to a high school or a Knights of Columbus hall, overtaken by Bengalis, where they are required to throw marigold petals at cardboard effigy of a goddess and eat bland vegetarian food. It can't compare to Christmas, when they hang stockings on the fireplace mantel. At this point, you can go to the right-hand side of your sheet and answer the question, how do the Gangulis adopt to American holiday traditions? There is a reason Gogol doesn't want to go to kindergarten. His parents have told him that at school, instead of being called Gogol, he will be called by a new name, a good name, which his parents have finally decided on, just in time for him to begin his formal education. The name, Nikhil, is artfully connected to the old. Not only is it a perfectly respectable Bengali good name, meaning he who is entire, encompassing all, but it also bears a satisfying resemblance to Nikolai, the first name of the Russian Gogol. At school, Ashok and Gogol are greeted by the secretary, Mrs. McNabb, who asks Ashok to fill out a registration form. "Welcome to elementary school, Nikhil. I am your principal, Mrs. Lapidus." Gogol looks down at his sneakers. The way the principal pronounces his new name is different from the way his parents say it, the second part of it longer, sounding like heel. She bends down so her face is level with his and extends a hand to his shoulder. "Can you tell me how old you are, Nikhil?" When the question is repeated and there is still no response, Mrs. Lapidus asks, "Mr. Ganguly, does Nikhil follow English?" "Of course he follows," Ashok says. "My son is perfectly bilingual." In order to prove that Gogol knows English, Ashok does something he has never done before, and addresses his son in careful, accented English. "Go on, Gogol," he says, patting him on the head. "Tell Mrs. Lapidus how old you are." "What was that?" Mrs. Lapidus says. "I beg your pardon, madam?" "That name you called him, something with a G." "Oh, that is what we call him at home only. But his good name should be, he nods his head firmly, Nikhil." Mrs. Lapidus frowns. I'm afraid I don't understand. Good name? Yes. The final stop on the trip is a graveyard where the writer lies buried. To Gogol's surprise, they are not to draw his grave, but to rub their surfaces. A teacher crouches down, one hand holding the newsprint in place, and shows them how the children begin to scamper between rows of the dead, over leaves, looking for their own names, a handful triumphant when they are able to claim a grave they are related to. Smith, they holler, Collins, Wood. Gogol is old enough to know that there is no Ganguly here. He is old enough to know that he himself will be burned, not buried, and his body will occupy no plot of earth, that no stone in his country will bear his name beyond life. In Calcutta, from taxis to the roof of his grandparents' house, he has seen the dead bodies of strangers carried on people's shoulders, through streets, decked with flowers, wrapped in sheets. At home, his mother is horrified. What type of field trip was this? Is it enough that they applied lipstick to their corpses and buried them in silk-lined boxes? Only in America, a phrase she has begun to resort to often these days, only in America are children taken to cemeteries in the name of art. What's next, she demands to know, a trip to the morgue? In Calcutta, the burning ghats are the most forbidden of places, she tells Gogol, and though she tries her best not to, though she was not there both times it happened, she sees her parents' bodies swallowed by flames. Death is not a pastime, she says, her voice rising unsteadily, not a place to make paintings. She refuses to display the rubbings in the kitchen alongside his finger creations, his charcoal drawings and his magazine collages, his pencil sketch of a Greek temple copied from an encyclopedia, his pastel image of the public library's facade, awarded first place in a contest sponsored by the library. Never before has she rejected a piece of her son's art. The guilt she feels at Gogol's deflated expression is leavened by her common sense. How can she be expected to cook dinner for her family with the names of dead people on the walls? But Gogol is attached to them, for reasons he cannot explain or necessarily understand. These ancient Puritan spirits, these very first immigrants to America, these bearers of unspeakable, obsolete names, have spoken to him, so much so that in spite of his mother's disgust, he refuses to throw the rubbings away behind his chest of drawers, where he knows his mother will never bother to look, and where they will remain protected, gathering dust for years to come. At this point, you can answer the question to the right-hand side of the page, how do the Gangulis adjust to American culture in terms of their dress and daily home life, which we will read about next. There are 4 other ways in which Ashok and Ashima give in. Though Ashima continues to wear nothing but saris and sandals from Bata, Ashok, accustomed to wearing tailor-made pants and shirts all his life, learns to buy ready-made. He trades the fountain pens for ballpoints, Willickson blades, and his Boristed shaving brush for Bic razors, bought 6 to a pack. Though he is now a tenured full professor, he stops wearing packets and ties to the university. Given that there is a clock everywhere he turns, at the side of his bed, over the stove where he prepares tea, in the car he drives to work, on the wall opposite his desk, he stops wearing a wristwatch, resigning his luba to the depths of his sock drawer. In the supermarket, they let Gogol fill the cart with items that he and Sonia buy, so they consume. Individually wrapped slices of cheese, mayonnaise, tuna fish, hot dogs. For Gogol's lunches, they stand at the deli to buy cold cuts, and in the morning, Ashima makes sandwiches with bologna or roast beef. At his insistence, she concedes and makes him an American dinner once a week as a treat, shake and bake chicken or hamburger helper prepared with ground lamb.